I will say that we are not having any action or public comment on today's meeting, but we do invite that those that are interested in learning more to just reach out to staff if you have any questions. The staff are going to open discussion, then we're going to pass the agenda over to the chair to lead. The public may access the meeting through various ways. You may view the hearing or meeting again on our TV channel, on Everett TV channel and Everett TV YouTube channel. And you can also, again, call in if you end up having audio issues to 425-616-3920. And the conference ID for that is 724-887-726#. Or you may access this meeting online via Teams through the Citizen Advisory Committee website at everettwa.gov. And so with that, I will kick this over to our chair. Before I do so, let me address just a point of procedure for what we're doing for our meeting today. We previously had Chair Kathy Lynott, who was with the committee. Chair Lynott had to step away for the remainder of this year with the committee, and so Vice Chair Mosshart has been kind enough to take over chair duties from this point forward. And so next year we will kick up, or at the end of this year for next year, we will kick up officer nominations again. And so I look forward to giving now Chair Mosshart our chair this past year, and she's been kind enough to step up again for this year. But I just wanted to give a point of order real quick for our committee to understand that our previous chair has stepped away from the committee, and we were very sad to see her leave, but I know that she is on to really great things right now, and so we definitely look forward to seeing her in the Everett community otherwise. And so with that, Chair Mosshart, now I will give it back over to you.
Thank you, and thank you so much. And it's at least I feel like I have a little more stability and foundation underneath me from last year. So I'm going to call roll right now, and then we'll proceed with the rest of our agenda. Sue Johnson is not here today. She's been excused. Matt Bissell. Josh Bruner.
Present.
Thank you. Michelle Martin.
Present.
Samantha Hassan is excused as well. Demba Balde. I see a DB, but is that somebody else?
Yeah, I believe Demba's with us. Demba, if you're able to unmute yourself, that would be great. And if not, then we will reach out and see if we can help you on the side for any technical issues. But Chair, please go ahead and continue.
Okay. Christopher Dingle.
He is also excused and unable to be here today.
Okay, I'm going to make a note of that. Molly Eberhardt.
Here.
Larissa Knott.
Here.
And I am here as well. Thank you. And will staff please identify themselves?
Kimber Landry, Community Development Manager.
And Vicki Doorway, and Community Development Specialist.
Thank you. So how the rules of procedure will go today is that I will call on each committee member during our discussion period. This is a complex hybrid approach, so please, if you need to make a comment or you have a question, please raise your hand in the hand raising function. But if you're there, like Michelle's there, she could just raise her hand. We can all see that. That will help facilitate efficiency with our meeting today. We're going to listen to the full presentation. Hi, Demba. We're going to listen to the full presentation before questions and discussion by committee members. So is that clear for everybody? I'm hoping it is. Okay. I'm going to turn it back over to Kimbra to do the AmpliFund and scoring recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just having a point of order so that we can get Demba to call in.
Okay.
Online instead, but he has now been given that. Oh, Demba, can your audio, you're unmuted. Are you with us? No, okay, he may have to, so he's gonna, it looks like he's gonna call in. Okay,
Okay.
so with that then, I will, share, the presentation, so. Wonderful. Okay, so again, welcome everyone to the Citizen Advisory Committee's public meeting for AmpliFund and for scoring recommendations on Tuesday, July 19th. So first, we're going to revisit some background and intent with the system and the grant management software, and then we will get into the actual formal recommendations that we're going to present to the committee. So again, the Citizen Advisory Committee's scoring role and expectations when it comes to reviewing applications are that CAC members are expected to review all submitted funding applications for funding awards. We typically have around 40 or more applications submitted annually, and that is through our 4 different funding opportunities that we have available: CDBG, Home Program Funds, HTF $2060, and our Human Needs Funds. An application review is completed independently by each committee member with committee discussion during public hearings. And following discussion, then funding award recommendations are made. And for our new committee members, if you have any questions during this time, just hold on to, either raise your hand and we can try to address them during the presentation, or if you can preferably hold on to them until afterwards as per the chair notes, then that would be appreciated. So again, AmpliFund is our online cloud-based grant management software that community development has been utilizing for the past year. And it includes also an open data portal for public interfacing. That's very important to the city right now. It's going to allow for us to have transparent provision of our spend downs for funds, our fund recommendations, accomplishments from grants, other important public data for the public to be able to extrapolate from the software. So people can go into the website and actually pull different reports that they would like to see on any kind of point in time immediate data needs for where we are with our grant funds. We are currently only utilizing AmpliFund for the 2022 Human Needs grants for our older committee members. Those that were with us last year, you will remember that, of course, we went through an application round with the 2022 Human Needs funds, and now staff are currently doing tracking of the awards still through AmpliFund, and so this is really establishing a more expeditious electronic process for staff and just general grant management and the life cycle of the grant. We are working to build and implement still AmpliFund for the 2023 program year for all funding sources. And again, that's taking a little bit of effort because we're transitioning from what was a paper process to electronic, and that's for our application forms as well as for the actual award itself. And we look forward to updating the committee further on that later on this fall on the 2023 electronic process. So first, we thought that it probably wouldn't be a bad idea for us to revisit what AmpliFund looks like and to introduce to our newer committee members the AmpliFund software. At this point, you all are not having, you should not have access to it yet. You will be invited to have access to it later. CAC members have limited views, and so then in that case, you will see that I'm acting as Molly, one of our committee members, to see what it looks like when you are a committee member into the system. This is the dashboard. The dashboard is your main landing page. When you are invited to start looking at applications, you will then have one of two ways to access that, and that's either through the award management component on the side tab, and you will pull up fund opportunities, or you can go in under your activity tab and then pull it under workflow actions. Everyone will get written instructions again on this. We just want to give visuals for the discussion today. Once you pull up either one of those two options, it will take you to the applications that you are supposed to review. As you will see on the screen, these are the 2022 applications that we had for our human needs funds. You will see on the right-hand side that there is an overall score that's already been provided. That's because these applications were reviewed and scored by the committee last year. When you get this for the upcoming funding rounds, there will not be scores already available to you. You will just see the agency name, the application name, the submission status, and then what their budget total is for it. So when you do click on an application, you'll click on the name of the application on that previous page. This is what immediately comes up. It is the landing page for that application. It has basic information for the opportunity, or for the application itself. It'll have both what the opportunity is applied under, so to make sure that you're looking at a human needs application versus a CDBG application. It will have primary contact information, and it will also start to capture any of the scoring information that you will be working on. So you are only looking at your scores in the system. When you are ready to start looking through the application content, you go up to the top of the page under application materials, and you will click on the project information. Is going to give you this basic landing page that we see here. The application forms, which I will show you what that looks like on the next page, or where we collect some of our narrative question and content. It will also include the budget, which is a proposed budget for what they're asking the award recommendation for, their proposed performance plan for accomplishments, and then all the supporting attachments that we require for a application submission. And that can include anything from an IRS determination letter to their most recent audit, to the board meeting minutes that allow for them to apply. So when you do open up a application form, this is what that will look like. This is the narrative form, so this is where we ask, the questions about the proposal. When you are acting as a reviewer to score these applications, on the side of each question that is ready to be scored, there will be a range for you to work from, because these are applications that have already been scored and we have not yet opened our application round. Otherwise, for other funds in the system, we are not seeing that on this screen. However, you will see that on yours when it opens up later this fall. And so this is where we just get basic questions about what they're asking for, the total project costs that they would like for us to support, the general operational dollars and project costs for the program annually, and can they use a reduced amount, do they fit a priority, et cetera, et cetera. So this wraps up just kind of a brief visual of, again, the AmpliFund software for those who may not be familiar. So now we're going to go back into our discussion points for today. So in revisiting AmpliFund scoring, how we got here, I guess is a better way to say it, is that with the 2022 Human Needs Funds, again, this was a new application and award tracking system that we were looking to implement for the committee and for the Community Development Fund opportunities. We introduced scoring for the first time for application review. That was on a 1 to 5 scale. The feedback that we got was that the rubric for that scoring was a little confusing. We also had an instance where we had unequal scoring, and so that means that some applications received only maybe 3 reviews from committee members, and others received 9 reviews from committee members. And so that caused unequal scoring issue that staff needed to work out, and we utilized average of scores to try and remediate that so that we could move forward with funding recommendations. And then we also, during the 2022 Human Needs Fund round, used tiered funding recommendations, and that allowed for scores that were above a certain threshold to receive a full recommendation for funding. If they were below the top threshold but above minimum threshold, then they received a reduced recommendation for funding, and if they were below what our minimum threshold was, then we did not move them forward for recommendation at all. So after all of this, after hearing the feedback from everybody, the intention with moving forward for this next round was to create a subcommittee, and we were successful with that. And then we wanted to present the recommendations from the subcommittee to the committee for review and discussion. Moving forward, the subcommittee will now continue to meet into late summer and early fall to implement the recommendations that we will decide upon today. And then we have the opportunity to do this again for future follow-up as needed. So I think that the most important thing is that we all agree on recommendations to be able to move forward for following today. And then if we see that we have more opportunities for improvement for next year, we can repeat this process again next year. So now is when we actually dive into the improvements that we are looking to recommend for AmpliFund. So again, these are the immediate improvements that we would like to look at adopting. The goal with this was to improve committee review participation and efficiency of the review process. So recommendations that have been proposed here are a clearer rubric focused on potential for success rather than completeness of the application. Reduce the questions or numbers of fields for scoring and review by committee members. And that's to allow for a more expeditious review because you will have so many applications you will be looking at. If all applications are not reviewed by a reviewer, then the recommendation is that none of the scores, of their scores for any application will be counted. This is not to be punitive at all, but more to try and just get, again, some equilibrium when we're looking at trying to look at scores across the board. And we also want to host in-person scoring and open house sessions for live troubleshooting with committee members. And Vicki, are you able to follow up with Demba's comment real quick? Demba, we're working on trying to touch base with you, don't? Working on it. We want to also revisit improvements that were discussed by the subcommittee but not recommended. And so again, we're revisiting the goal that we're trying to improve participation and efficiency. And so when we looked at recommendations to consider but not implement, we looked at phased review of applications. And so that would mean giving committee members only a few applications to do at a time. We also looked at subsets of application review by theme or priority, so only rolling out maybe those that fit housing priority, only rolling out those that fit homeless priority, and still trying to have a phasing approach in a sense. And then review of sections of applications based on interest or expertise. These improvements, again, were considered but not recommended for various reasons for implementation at this time. Lastly, we do want to visit what we are keeping with the system. And with that, we are still going to keep weighted categories that focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, community engagement, and potential for impact. Last year, we had these same categories, and so we are looking to maintain these for this year. As I mentioned earlier, we also had tiered funding allocations last year. We are looking to maintain that for this next funding year. We want to keep committee members being able to ask or share questions that they have on the application with staff. And applicants can then provide answers during staff meetings, and staff can then carry that back to the committee members, or they can answer those during the public hearing component of the meeting. And then we also just want to, again, maintain what we've been doing for a few years, which is to target fewer and bigger grants overall. And so with that, I believe I'm done.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop sharing and then hand this over to subcommittee.
Okay, so our subcommittee shrank by one person, and I would like to say that, is it okay to say that if anybody on our general committee is interested in joining the subcommittee, that we would love to have another person that would, help with opening up more discussion and more ideas for this. Molly, me, Vicky, and Kimbra were the subcommittee, and it became really evident to me at the end of our last funding period that the unequal review of the applications, that we needed to do something to address whether it was the onerousness of the amount, or just how detailed they were, the shift. And so it was really fun and very informative for me to dig a little bit deeper in what other grant institutions were doing to make it more user friendly. Do you have anything to add, Molly?
I think I'd just add that as a new committee member who has not gone through the process before, it was interesting to sort of hear the reflections from other folks about what have been some of the reasons why it's been difficult for everyone to complete all of the reviews in the past. And then we kind of focused our efforts on, okay, how can we make it easier for everyone to review and score everything in a way that feels really useful, and that we're focusing on the most important things for each person's contributions. So that was kind of the framing that I brought to it as a new committee member.
Thank you. And so I think it's really important here, as we've done this work and we've come up with some ideas for changing and hopefully implementing, that each committee member that's here with us today have an opportunity to either ask questions or give us input, because again, we're all doing this together and we want to make it as easy and efficient as we possibly can, so that we have a really good representation when it comes time to score our next round this fall. So Kimber, do you want me to then go down the list and ask each person to make a comment or question?
Yeah, I think that we're at the point where we can open it up for the committee discussion on recommendations. So
Okay.
Please.
Do we need to, we don't need to have a, go, Vicky.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if Demba, since he's not able to communicate with us, would he be able to write a comment?
No, actually, I can hear you guys from my cell phone, so I'm logged in twice.
Yay!
That was my comment there, is that I'm logged in. You see me logged in twice because I couldn't hear on the computer, but on the cell phone I can.
Okay, great.
So we're good.
Okay.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yep.
So Josh Bruner, would you like to comment or add anything to this discussion, please?
I obviously, as a newer member, I haven't used it, so I don't have a lot to say on it yet. I guess is there any way to bring the suggested stuff back up?
Yeah, just I will go back and make sure that I have. Okay, so let me go. Okay. Do you see it yet?
Yeah. I think it was one more. It was the ones that were improvements but not recommended. I was just, yeah. So I think I guess just from a high level understanding of what the tool is, I could almost see how phase review could be useful. But again, that's looking at it from a perspective of not having used this. And so from what it looked like, is it could potentially be overwhelmed with a whole bunch that come all at once. But yeah, I guess once I start getting in there, I'll have a better understanding of that. And I could definitely see the usefulness of the subsets, especially for those of us who are still trying to understand like which funding goes to what, and having like being able to like better understand, when we're looking at like total funding, for each individual subsets. Yeah, I think both those things could be very useful. But yeah, the rest of it definitely looks good to me. But yeah, not having used it, I can't say too much on it yet.
So I can respond to that, Chair, if you're okay with it.
That'd be great. I would love that. Thank you.
So first of all, thank you for bringing this up and this slide. The subcommittee was really good about really kind of diving into the reasons why we wanted to recommend something or not. And so I do kind of have some of those listed here about justifications why we wanted to not move forward with this. So first of all is that, when we're looking at doing the funding timeline and when we're having to look at application review, there are some really tight deadlines that we're working with. And when we're looking at having to do phase review, we just weren't quite sure if it was a possible effort that we could obtain at this time. Furthermore, we saw that there might be some limited knowledge that might occur with the Committee on Funding Recommendations. And I can kind of get into the reasons why with that, because so phasing an AmpliFund, when you're reviewing applications in AmpliFund, you are reviewing an application, scoring it, and then submitting it back to the workflow. And when it goes back into the workflow, as soon as you're done with your scoring for it, it's now closed. It is not something, so staff would have to get, so for example, so once it's closed, then those applications and that group of applications being reviewed, if that was for a week and somebody missed that week, they would not be able to go back and then catch up on those applications that were in that phase 1 rollout. And that's because the way the AmpliFund works with its system. So staff would have to go back and open those back up, which could then cause issues with the scoring overall, and then having that application then go back through the process and the workflow for it. And so we saw some issues when it came to the internal process with the system with trying to do phased review, at least for that first bullet point for it. Furthermore, the subsets of the application review by theme or priority, that while that's a good thing to look at overall, you run into issues where, of course, for those that may not meet a priority, you may have 1 or 2 applications that you're looking at, that may be focused on other things that we're not identifying as priorities. I don't want to give any specifics, but they may not meet the housing priority, they may not meet the homelessness priority. But then for housing and homelessness, you may end up having 10 or more applications for each of those priorities, and so then we run into another unequal kind of bucket of application reviews for that if we were to break it up by theme or priority. And then furthermore, when it came to interest or expertise, we may end up having a group of applications that no one's interested really in reviewing. And so then we have nobody scoring those applications and 9 or 10 people scoring all the homelessness applications. And so when we tried to look at this and trying to kind of bring up justifications for not adopting these considerations at this time, it was both system concerns that we had with the internal workflow and the process of the grant management software, as well as trying to be mindful of the way that would truly get rolled out and application review by committee members. Are you going to be dealing with 2 or 5, or are we still going to be dealing with unequal scoring? So I'll pause at that point, and I see that another committee member's hand is raised.
I don't see the hand raised.
Yeah, it's me. It's Demba here.
Hi, Demba.
I think my hand is up on the computer. I just have a quick question. I'm sorry, and I may have missed the last meeting where the subcommittees were selected. I just want to know the composition of the subcommittee. How many committee members are on that, and how many staff members are on that, the subcommittee?
So good question. So I think that we did bring this up in the last meeting, and I'm not sure if we also. I know that we brought it up in our public hearing for supplemental priorities at that time, and so we had the chair, Kathy, join us initially for the subcommittee. Obviously, the current chair, Susan helped us and also joined us, as well as one of our newer committee members, Molly, joined us. We didn't have anybody else volunteer for the subcommittee at that time. And then, of course, Vicki and I were also on the subcommittee giving staff expertise for the software and the systems.
So you have 5 people on it?
4.
Correct.
4? Okay.
4 now. It started out to be 5.
I see. So that includes these 2 staff?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Did that clear it up, Josh, for you?
Yes, that does. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Michelle Martin, would you like to contribute, please and thank you?
Yes, so if you could go back one slide to what the improvements that you're going to do. One thing that I wanted to learn a little bit more about is that, did this include a recommendation to meet together to understand the scoring definitions? So is that what you mean by rubric? So what the score means, so that the committee understands that all together at the same time, what a 1 means in this case, or what a 2 means, or a 3 or a 4 or a 5 on the different, on the scoring that you do on the different elements?
Yeah, so I'll say that, so we have 2 points that support exactly what you're asking. So the clear rubric was something that definitely we heard loud and clear from the feedback from last year. And so we're going to create a clear rubric with the subcommittee following this that is, again, focused on the actual impact of the program and the activity rather than the completeness of the application, which is what the committee felt was their purpose and rubric for last year. So we do have a clear rubric that we're going to establish, first of all, and then second of all, the last point is the host in-person scoring open house sessions for live troubleshooting. At that point, we can also dive into specific questions on the rubric itself. We have to be mindful that anytime we have quorum for committee members, we have to trigger public notice requirements and things like that. And so when we're looking at hosting these in-person scoring and open house sessions, we will be trying to make it so that there's small, intimate groups with staff, which may work out better anyway for questions, for people to be able to ask questions, get a little bit more one-on-one attention from staff on how to work through, any questions that arise at that time. But, that we could also, our August hearing is going to be pretty hefty. But, if the committee wants us to bring up, the rubric that we're looking at that time, we can present that at that time just for initial, touch and a toe dip on digesting it. But it is, that's going to be a very meaty public hearing. And so we want to try and make it so that, when you get the opportunity to really dive into the system, you're able to really focus on the nuances that we're trying to achieve when we're looking at scoring. So hopefully that helps to answer your question.
Yeah, and I guess one other part to that is that you mentioned that sometimes not looking at the application for completeness versus the content or the impact of the application or the grant request. And so I could imagine, without having reviewed any of these, that there would be situations where you had someone that was new to the grant process, new to writing grants or applying, but they've got a high impact potential with what they're asking for. And so you wouldn't want to penalize them going through, and so you're covering that. That's what I took away from what you were saying about the process.
Yeah, and I'll invite the subcommittee to also kind of support, the intent that we had with that. But I will say one thing that we don't have listed on here that we were going to try and do for better understanding and from the committee members is the staff before it even gets to the committee for review, staff is doing an eligibility and completeness
Okay.
review ourselves.
All right.
And at the same time, a lot of the nuance, especially with the federal funds, it's better, it is good that the staff is kind of going in and going, oh, no, we're sure that this program can receive federal dollars. We're sure that they're compliant with the federal standards. One thing that we can do better is making our comments for eligibility and completeness visible to the committee members during the scoring process, so that by the time it gets to you all, you can see any of the staff review that we had prior to it that talk about those two components of it.
Okay.
So we felt like that would be a good effort that we could provide back to the committee for transparency on trying to understand, you know, like, and there was a good example of that I know Vicki always brings up, which is, you know, if it's a program that can explicitly say we're going to, you know, cover X amount of hotel vouchers for X amount of people, and you know the delivery and you can understand the outcome of that, you're housing people immediately, that sometimes is a little bit easier to write a narrative for than trying to write a narrative for something that's a little bit more nuanced, maybe with mental health courses or something else like that. So.
Okay. And I guess my last question about it was, will we learn, you know, a process whereby that we start with the first application and work through the 50th application? Or do people, when they go into the software, hop around and score different ones? Or is it a workflow of we're all working towards the same goal, so we're all doing our reviews sequentially, starting with the first application, going through whatever applications are in the system?
So it's not sequentially.
Okay.
So it's you're not going to have a rollout where, you know, and the instance I brought up earlier on the screen, Cocoon House was the first one,
Okay.
like alphabetical orders, I think, how
Right.
they're really listed. But so I'm sorry to Cocoon House if they're listening, but I'm not picking on you. You were just the first on the screen. But so you could start with Cocoon House, or you could skip down to F and start with F, and you might want to start with that one, and somebody else is working on B, and somebody else is working on Z, you know, and that will stay open until you formally submit your scores and complete the workflow for your particular user experience and your review in the software.
I was just thinking of, if all applications aren't reviewed by a reviewer, none of their scores will be counted. So wouldn't you want to get as many applications fully reviewed as possible and complete? So it would, I don't know, I'm kind of a sequential type person. So, you know, it's kind of like maybe someone's hopping around in there, they're going to get number 1 done and number 5 done, but they didn't get 2, 3, and 4 done.
Okay,
So,
can I interrupt?
yeah.
The expectation at the goal at the top is that everybody's going to review all applications. That is the expectation of the committee. So it's not like we're not, that's why we're not breaking them up or phasing them and not segmenting them. The expectation is that every committee member will review and score every application.
Okay.
And you can do it in any order that feels good to you.
Right. So
does that make sense?
Around, they would want to be keeping track of
where they are,
knowing
so
what
that they
their
were getting,
method is.
Yeah. Okay.
The good news is that, and you know, any of the committee members that have done this before can pipe up and tell what your experience was in the system. But the good news is that when you submit a score, you're going to have to choose it in the workflow and get it to the next step. You can't go back then and play in that. So if anybody did reach a point of confusion and they went back to an application, all of a sudden they figured out that they couldn't adjust the scores or do anything with it, well, that's because you had already done that. So that may help to clear up some confusion on it, that as soon as you're done with your scores, you're done with your scores. So as soon as you hit submit, and that's why also the phasing component of it that was one of the roadblocks on trying to do that, is that as soon as you submit that, you know, we can't open that back up unless staff goes in and opens it back in the entire process again.
Okay. Well, that helps. I just wanted to kind of visualize it from a process standpoint for when we start.
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, good question.
Thanks.
Really good question. Are you complete, Michelle?
I'm complete.
Oh, thank you. Demba, do you have any other discussion or questions or comments?
No other questions or comments.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Molly, would you like to add anything?
One thing that I just wanted to flag is this last bullet point here where we, for committee members kind of discussion and feedback. So we thought that one way to help people set aside time to make sure they can complete the reviews, but also be around colleagues who can help troubleshoot questions with AmpliFund or how the rubric works. It might be helpful to have sort of in-person scoring sessions where we can all sort of sit independently with our computers and do our scoring, but have each other nearby as resources. So I think in the coming weeks, the subcommittee will be working on figuring out exactly what that will look like. But we'd be very eager for input on how we can set that up and structure it in a way that works for people's schedules in terms of length of session, time of session, location of session. So hopefully people can share feedback on that so we can make it as useful as possible.
Thank you. Larissa, would love to hear from you.
My only comment is just like a pro tip, like make sure you give yourself enough time. 40 applications is a lot to sift through. Don't think you can do it in one sitting. Like when you're grading things, I feel like I personally am not the grading at the same level when I'm grading the first couple versus the last few, right? If I do them all in one sitting. So it's like break it up over days, give yourself plenty of time. She said they're open for a week potentially, you know, because we are on a quick turnaround. It's like, see if you can get a few in every day.
Perfect. Thank you. I think that's it for committee discussion unless something else has come up for somebody based on what we've heard so far. So Kimbra, how would we have a subcommittee schedule? Or do we vote on this then?
No, so again, so no action today.
No action.
No action, no public comment. So at this point, if it's okay, I'm going to stop sharing the improvements on the screen, only so that we can all have the enjoyment of seeing each other.
Okay.
So to that point, we can go into staff updates and next steps, and that will kind of cover what we're going to be doing for the subcommittee schedule and how we move forward with these recommendations, if that's okay, Chair.
Molly, do you have your hand up, or is that my hand? No, I don't. Okay, it's my thing. Never mind. Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, Kimbra.
That's fine. Technical issues. I get it.
Technical. Yes.
Okay, so again, so the subcommittee is going to continue to meet. We have a meeting scheduled for next week, and then we have another one scheduled before the August 16th hearing, I believe. And at the August 16th hearing, we are fully expecting at this point to have everything built into the AmpliFund and have the recommendations finalized and have everything built into the system, because of course staff is working in the back end with AmpliFund during all this time to finish building out the application forms. And so then that kind of, by the time that we have our April 16th hearing, and that will get us into some of our funding discussion that I'm going to have Vicki help to augment for me. But our April 16th hearing again is going to be August 16th.
August.
Goodness gracious. August 16th is in the fall, not the spring, is going to be the public hearing for the 2023 annual needs. It will also be the public hearing to look at the supplemental funding round that is currently out for application.
Funding recommendations.
Right, funding recommendations, yeah. So the committee will actually be doing their first toe dip and for new committee members into what it looks like to give funding recommendations. This is not going to be through AmpliFund. This is for committee members that are used to this. This is going to be based on the electronic process we've been doing for the past 2 years under COVID, where you're going to have a PDF of the applications and you'll go through it based on what our paper application used to be. And that's just because we didn't have everything built out by the time we did the NOFA this last time for the supplemental funds. And then you'll also be looking at our 2021 CAPER, which is our Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report for the 2021 program year. And that is basically going to summarize the accomplishments that we did on this last program year again. And that's good for that to all be, guys, for that. It's good for you guys to be mindful of all of that because, of course, we want to be mindful of that as we establish priority needs moving forward. What have we already done well to meet the needs that have been established? How did we do on that? And then what do we want to continue to augment and elevate for the next program years in 2023 and subsequently 2024? And then we'll get into a new consolidated plan and we'll have to do all this all over again. So with that, again, because that's going to be so hefty of a public hearing, we can absolutely give a staff update at the end of that for where the subcommittee recommendations are and their implementation, because of course that's kind of the goal, is that for that to be finished at that point. I know that we will have a lot to go through, so I don't want to tax anybody again on that. So maybe just giving a quick staff update is where we leave it at, and then if there are any additional follow-up needs from that, then the committee members can definitely reach out to staff. But I would assume that following that in probably, I think that we looked at it in maybe late September, early October is when we would probably try and start looking at the open house opportunities with committee members to start having that one-on-one time with staff and with one or two other committee members to help start understand the scoring process and AmpliFund for the 2023 program year. So with that, I'm going to then kick it back over to Vicki to go over some of our other funding schedule items that are coming up.
Okay, so hopefully everyone on the committee received the news flash on Friday announcing our 2022 supplemental funding round for CDBG non-public service projects. So those are due on August 5th. And then Kemba and I will be doing some review on those and getting those out to you by August 10th. There is a quick turnaround because they need to be reviewed by the 15th, but this is non-public facility improvements, different, I mean, we don't know exactly what we'll get, but they're not like, you know, public services like a program. This is more like a project, a rehab, a facility improvement, things like that. So we don't expect as many of them. So that's kind of why we were thinking that time frame would work, but just keep in mind around then that you're going to have however many applications come in and that we reviewed to make sure that they're complete and have all the information and documentation that's needed for that. So, and then this is looking down the road, but we'll be getting into our regular funding year, our 2023 program year for basically all four programs. The Human Needs Funds start in January, and the CDBG, AHTF, and Home Funds start in July of 2023. So we're just starting the program year for those three programs as of July 1st of 2022 for the 2022 program year, but we're already going to be looking ahead and having organizations apply for the 2023 program year. And so that notice of funding availability will be going out in mid-September. We're looking around September 19th. And that notice will be open through October 24th. This is kind of our plan schedule. It could change a little bit, but so agencies, organizations will have, you know, 5 weeks because they'll be applying for CDBG and Human Needs Funds. And then we have a whole process that we'll be going through on getting, you won't be reviewing Human Needs and the CDBG at the same time. You'll be doing one batch and then a couple weeks later another batch, but you'll be enjoying lots of reading and scoring of applications in the fall and early winter.
And I think that the only thing that we have left is just to give update again. So AmpliFund, as it is right now, staff is building out the applications for all of these. We are going to carry forward our efforts with AmpliFund. It doesn't just stop with applications. It goes back into the award build out, and that goes back into what I had presented earlier about AmpliFund, which is the open data portal. If I've said it once, I'm going to say it 50 more times, and that is that we are in a new period for funding with community development, where before we haven't been able to give such clear metrics on where we're at with everything with our funding. And this system is allowing us to be more transparent than ever with both the spend down of where we are with our public funds, as well as where agencies are in their accomplishments in utilizing those dollars. And so there is an opportunity right now, if anybody wanted to kind of really get happy with AmpliFund, to start looking at where we're at with this. All of our committee members that have done this before, your accounts are still active in the system. And so you could go in and actually look at where agencies are at for their spend downs. New members, we are going to be enrolling you into AmpliFund, and so when you get into the system, you will see that there's an invite that you've received. And again, you can start to look into the awards as they are right now and see where people are with their spend downs, where they are with their accomplishments. I'm going to try not to do that right now, because by July, a lot of agencies have, have either had creative funding to get to a point where they didn't need to bill us for the first quarter because they had another grant to cover that, and so they may be billing us for the second quarter, or they're also trying to still get used to AmpliFund, and so they're still catching up on how to appropriately report metrics. So you may end up seeing that maybe by August or September, there's a little bit more of a catch-up with actually getting everything in the system for tracking on accomplishments and spend down. But again, if you have the ability to go in and look at the system before you really start going into score some of the applications, it may just help with user friendliness overall. And the last thing I will say is that committee members still have the ability to utilize AmpliFund's Zendesk for help, and that is a separate website, separate from our funding opportunities and our award tracking that we have, and the Zendesk is available for any technical issues. They're not going to be able to tell you, like, how come the City of Everett report says that they have $451,000 here and they've only spent, like 200,000 of it. They won't get into that, but they'll get into, I forgot my password. I need the ability to try and figure out how to use my dashboard. All of those are still available as well, and there are also still recordings of everything on the city's website for the grant management software portal. So again, if you're really, really interested in looking at all the training we did last year, all of the videos for that are still up on the website. It's all still available to you. Applicants, if anybody's listening, all of those training opportunities are still there as well. And so just know that there's a lot of stuff that's still going on in the background with AmpliFund. We're still learning the opportunities that the system has for tracking our federal awards, and that can include program income that's generated by each award to, the actual expenditures for multiple year construction projects. So a lot of stuff still going on with it. Applications are just one facet. That's the very, very early stages of an award. Just know that there's a lot of stuff that you can still play in the system to really kind of get an intimate knowledge of how these awards end up being utilized by agencies and what that information looks like for the public when it's going to start being available for that open data portal I mentioned earlier. So AmpliFund is still something that we're navigating. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to staff, reach out to the Zendesk, and we look forward to rolling this out for our next program year. So thank you, everybody, for your feedback. And Chair, I will give it back to you at this time.
Okay. Are there any other comments, questions, anything before we make a motion to adjourn? No? In that case, I need a motion to adjourn.
I, Larissa, move that we adjourn.
I need a second, please.
I second it.
Thanks, Demba. Anybody not agree? Then this meeting for today is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.